So today we are going to continue with the anti-diabetic drugs. We have already discussed sulfonylureas, meglitinides, D-phenylalanine analogs. All the three groups act by binding to the ATP regulated potassium channels. Plus we have discussed the GLP-1 analogs like exenatide, which act like the incretins, decrease glucagon and increased insulin release. So in the incretins we have two things. One we have already discussed, that is GLP-1 analogs. Second is those drugs which inhibit the metabolism of GLP-1. These are enzyme inhibitors, that is dipeptidyl peptidase 4 inhibitors. This enzyme is responsible for metabolism and termination of action of incretins like GLP-1 and GIP. So the drugs which are inhibitors of this enzyme will prolong the duration of action of incretins. Drugs included in this group are sitagliptin, vildagliptin, saxagliptin, alogliptin and linagliptin. First to be introduced was a drug inhibiting DPP-4 competitively, that is sitagliptin is competitive inhibitor of DPP-4 and it is a selective drug, that is it inhibits only DPP-4. Now what will happen when this enzyme is inhibited? There will be less metabolism of incretins, so it interferes. These drugs interfere with degradation of incretins named GLP-1 and GIP. So what will happen? There will be more action of these incretins, hence postprandial insulin is increased but glucagon is decreased because GLP-1 receptors are present on alpha and beta cells. Now when insulin is more, the meal time or postprandial as well as fasting blood glucose levels will come down and HbA1c, glycated hemoglobin, is also reduced. We use these drugs as adjuvants to other drugs in type 2 diabetes, and advantage over GLP-1 agonists is these are orally effective. GLP-1 agonists like exenatide were peptides, so they were given as subcutaneous injection, but here these DPP-4 inhibitors can be used by oral route. They are effective by oral route also. Now there is no effect on gastric emptying time or appetite, so they do not cause weight loss. Unlike GLP agonists, they do not cause weight loss. They are weight neutral. Excretion of sitagliptin is through the kidney, half-life being 12 hours. So dosage adjustment should be done in patients with renal disease. It causes adverse effects like diarrhea, nausea, allergies. Now, in addition to incretins, DPP-4 enzyme degrades substance P also. So, levels of substance P, they will also be increased, and patient can have symptoms like nasopharyngitis or cough. So, sitagliptin, competitive DPP-4 inhibitor, useful as adjuvant therapy. Other drugs in this group, vildagliptin is binding covalently to the enzyme. So enzyme is inhibited, covalent bond is strong bond. So the enzyme is inhibited for a longer time, Hence, although its half-life is short, but duration of action is longer, 12 to 24 hours, so it can be given once or twice daily. Metabolism is in the liver, excretion is by the kidney, so we will need to adjust the dose of vildagliptin in hepatic and renal diseases, whereas sitagliptin is dose reduced only in renal disease. Some cases of hepatotoxicity have been reported with vildagliptin. Next drug in the group also binds covalently and has duration of action more than its half-life. Alogliptin and linagliptin are most recent members of this class. So till now we were discussing the drugs which act by increasing the release of insulin by one mechanism, binding to sulfonylurea receptor, or by the other mechanism, that is incretin agonistic or DPP4 inhibition. Second major group effective in the therapy of diabetic patients is drugs which increase the actions of insulin on the peripheral tissues, or drugs which have actions like insulin on the peripheral tissues. They include two major groups, biguanides and thiazolidine diones. In biguanides, we have only two drugs, fenformin and metformin. Fenformin is not used because it carries the risk of lactic acidosis. So, practically speaking, only drug in this group is metformin, but this is the most useful drug of diabetes, rather first choice drug in obese diabetics, metformin. So very important from examination point of view also, and clinically it is first choice drug. Now, what is the mechanism? It has the same actions on the peripheral tissues, that is liver, skeletal muscles, as insulin. Its actions are same as those of insulins, or it increases the actions of insulin on the peripheral tissues. In the liver and kidney, it inhibits gluconeogenesis, that is new production of glucose from non-carbohydrate sources is inhibited. So hepatic glucose output will be reduced. New glucose is not being formed. Uptake and utilization of glucose by the skeletal muscles is increased, so insulin resistance decreases. Tissues become more responsive to insulin. Absorption of glucose from the GIT is slowed down. Now this glucose which remains in the enterocytes, which remains available for the enterocytes, gets converted into lactates. That is why they carry some risk of causing lactic acidosis. Metformin promotes the binding of insulin to its receptors, so it will be useful in patients with insulin resistance. Insulin resistance. So these mechanisms are very important. If you consider the blood glucose, the blood as a bucket in which there are few things which add sugar or glucose into it and few things which remove glucose from it. So those mechanisms which add glucose to the blood are gluconeogenesis, glycogenolysis, right, and those which are extracting and glucose absorption from the GIT. Three mechanisms: glucose absorbed from food, number one; new glucose synthesized, gluconeogenesis; and glucose synthesized because of glycogen breakdown, glycogenolysis. These are the three sources which add glucose into the blood. And removal of glucose from the blood is by uptake and utilization of glucose in the skeletal muscles, right? So metformin decreases this, so less glucose is coming into the blood, more glucose is moving out, less is coming in by first and third mechanism, more is moving out, hence it will reduce the blood glucose. Now, why it is first choice drug? What are the advantages offered by metformin over the sulfonylureas? Now, as the mechanism you have just seen, there is no effect on the release of insulin. So, the efficacy or effectiveness of metformin is not dependent upon the functional beta cells. In sulfonylureas, we have seen that at least 30% beta cells should be functional for sulfonylureas to be effective, because they cause release of preformed insulin. Now here the efficacy is not dependent on the functionality of beta cells, because it acts by peripheral mechanisms. It is euglycemic, so there is no fear of hypoglycemia. That is the biggest advantage offered by metformin over sulfonylureas, that it does not lowers the normal glucose levels. It only lowers the raised glucose levels to the normal values. It is called euglycemic. It is not hypoglycemic. That is why I told you in the beginning that the group is being renamed as anti-diabetics. The whole classification is of anti-diabetics and not of hypoglycemics, because some of the drugs are euglycemic. It does not cause weight gain, so we can give it in the obese diabetics. And it has favorable effect on the lipid profile also. The LDL and VLDL, low density and very low density lipoproteins, they are sort of enemies of heart. They are lowered, and HDL, which is friendly or favorable lipoprotein, that is raised. So favorable effect on the lipoproteins or lipid profile, no weight gain, no hypoglycemia, no dependence on beta cell functionality. These are the advantages offered by metformin over the sulfonylureas. You may be asked why metformin is preferred drug, or why it is first choice drug, why preferred over others. And in addition, as it improves insulin sensitivity of the tissues, it decreases micro and macrovascular complications of diabetes. Therapeutic uses, as I told you, it is the first choice drug, especially for obese diabetics, because there is no risk of further weight gain with this drug. No weight gain because it decreases the insulin resistance. It can be given alone, it can be combined with other groups of drugs, sulfonylureas or glitazones, thiazolidinediones or meglitinides, for treatment of insulin resistance syndrome. Another indication for use of metformin is PCOD, where it improves the insulin sensitivity and decreases the androgen levels. Polycystic ovarian disease is commonly associated with raised androgens and decreased insulin sensitivity. Metformin reverses insulin resistance or increases insulin sensitivity, and androgen is reduced, so it is effective to decrease the hirsutism and infertility in PCOD patients. Common adverse effects observed are nausea, vomiting, flatulence, diarrhea, and there can be metallic taste. It decreases glucose absorption. At the same time, it decreases the absorption of vitamin B12, so supplements are needed. Lactic acidosis can occur but is lesser with metformin as compared to fenformin. That is why we don't use fenformin nowadays. Though risk of lactic acidosis is more in patients with hepatic or renal function impairment, respiratory disease, cardiac disease, or alcoholics. So after metformin, the next group of drugs acting on the peripheral tissues is thiazolidinediones. There are two drugs in this, rosiglitazone and pioglitazone. Now rosiglitazone is not used because it causes unacceptable adverse effects. CHF, myocardial infarction, cardiovascular accidents, stroke and death may occur. So because of the potential of rosiglitazone to cause these serious adverse effects which can be fatal, it is not used. Only one drug in this group again is pioglitazone. So for bigonides, single drug metformin. For thiazolidinediones, single drug pioglitazone. How does it act? Now this is a unique mechanism of action for pioglitazone, P for pioglitazone, and it is PPAR gamma receptor agonist. P is for peroxisome, P is for proliferator. Peroxisome proliferator activated receptor gamma, which is specially present in the fat cells and also present in the muscles. So P for pioglitazone acts on PPAR gamma receptors as an agonist. These receptors are present in fat cells and in muscles, skeletal muscles. Now when an agonist binds with these PPAR gamma receptors, what happens? There occurs transcription of several insulin responsive genes. So resistance to insulin is reversed because several insulin responsive genes are transcripted. So resistance to insulin is gone, it is reversed. Sensitivity is, tissues again become sensitive to insulin. So all the actions of insulin will increase. There is increased expression of glucose transporter 4, and this transporter is translocated onto the cell membrane. So uptake of glucose into the muscles and fat cells is increased. Gluconeogenesis is suppressed. Blood glucose and HbA1c are lowered, though insulin levels are not increased. It is not causing release of insulin. It is increasing the sensitivity of tissues to insulin. So without increasing the insulin levels, it lowers the blood glucose and glycated hemoglobin. By increasing the sensitivity of tissues to insulin, or by reversing the insulin resistance, it sensitizes the adipose tissue to action of insulin. Turnover of adipocytes and their differentiation is improved. So levels of triglycerides are lowered but HDL are raised, though there is not much effect on LDL. If we compare with The previous drug, it was lowering LDL and raising HDL. Pioglitazone has not much effect on LDL, but it raises HDL and lowers triglycerides. So all the actions of insulin are enhanced, though secretion is not enhanced. So it will also not cause hypoglycemia. Drugs which do not increase insulin secretion do not cause hypoglycemia. Its adverse effects are due to the expansion of plasma volume. It can cause edema, weight gain, or precipitate the congestive cardiac failure. Other adverse effects: headache, myalgias, mild anemia, hepatic dysfunctions. So it is contraindicated in liver disease and in CHF. Indication for use is as an adjuvant in type 2 diabetes, not in type 1, because in type 1 there is no insulin. Next group is third group of drugs. So first group has three members or three subgroups. First group was drugs increasing insulin secretion, and the three subgroups were sulfonylureas, meglitinides, and diphenylalanine analog netiglinide. Then there were GLP-1 analogs, exenatide, liraglutide, etc. And then there were DPP-4 inhibitors. Second group was of the drugs which do not increase insulin release, but they improve the sensitivity of peripheral tissues to insulin, or they have insulin-like actions. Third group is of the drugs which decrease the absorption of glucose from the GIT, and this is single group in it, alpha glucosidase inhibitors. The name of the drug is acarbose, which is a complex oligosaccharide, and it acts by inhibiting the enzyme alpha glucosidase, as the name indicates. Acarbose is inhibitor of this enzyme alpha glucosidase. Now what is the action of alpha glucosidase? Normally it is the final enzyme for digestion of carbohydrates in the brush border of small intestinal mucosa. This enzyme is reversibly inhibited by acarbose, so final step of carbohydrate digestion is inhibited. So there is reduced or slowing down of digestion and absorption of polysaccharides. Another additional effect is it increases the GLP-1 release. So significant increase in GLP-1's effects, that is increased insulin level, control of postprandial hyperglycemia, and control of glycated hemoglobin. Again, this is having less risk of hypoglycemia and can be used as adjuvant to diet restriction in obese type 2 diabetics. Now as the polysaccharides are absorbed slowly, so they remain unabsorbed in the gut, they get fermented and can cause these disturbing gastrointestinal adverse effects like flatulence, abdominal discomfort, and diarrhea or loose stools. So that was about the major groups. There are few other groups of drugs which have quite different mechanisms of action and result in reduced blood glucose levels. One such group is SGLT2 inhibitors, sodium glucose transporter or co-transporter. Sodium glucose co-transporter 2 inhibitors, canagliflozin, dapagliflozin, and empagliflozin. These drugs act on the kidney in the renal tubules. And they inhibit the enzyme, they inhibit the co-transporter of sodium and glucose, SGLT2, in the renal tubules. So once the glucose is filtered, its reabsorption will be reduced, because reabsorption is through this co-transporter. Glucose gets filtered, but it is not reabsorbed, or it is less reabsorbed. Now when it is less reabsorbed, what will happen? It will stay in the lumen of the renal tubule and will be passed out in the urine. So the urinary excretion of glucose will be increased. Now when more glucose is being lost in the urine, plasma glucose levels will come down. So unique mechanism of action, nothing to do with insulin. Absolutely different thing, different route or different mechanism. Canagliflozin can be used as a third line drug in type 2 diabetics and is effective by the oral route. But ADRs are, though itself it is not increasing insulin release, but when we combine it with sulfonylureas, hypoglycemia may occur. Now, if excess of glucose is being lost, along with that there will be loss of water, so polyuria, and there can occur hypotension. Now, risk of urinary infections and genital thrush is more as glucose is being excreted in excess through the urinary tract, through the urinary route. Other adverse effects of this drug are constipation and increased LDL levels. So SGLT2 inhibitors may be asked sometimes. Another group of drugs with a very different type of mechanism of action is amylin mimetic drugs, and the drug in this group is pramlintide. Now for that you will need to know what is amylin and how the drugs which mimic the effect of amylin, how they will reduce the blood glucose. Now amylin is also a peptide hormone secreted by the beta cells, and pattern of its secretion is same as that of insulin. As insulin is secreted after a meal, amylin is also secreted post meal. It is also deficient in some diabetics. The drug which is an analog of amylin is pramlintide. Now as it is a peptide, it will be effective only by subcutaneous route. It is not orally effective. Another group of drugs which were not orally effective were analogs of GLP-1. They were peptides, exenatide. They were given subcutaneously. This drug is also used by subcutaneous route. It affects gastrointestinal and glucodynamic systems and improves the glycemic control through these mechanisms. How? Number one, effect on the gastric emptying, so that the absorption of glucose from the food is slowed down. It prevents the postprandial rise in levels of glucagon, so glucose production by the liver is reduced. It increases the satiety sensation. Patient feels full earlier. So the total caloric intake will reduce and weight loss will occur. Sensation of satiety. Amylin analog pramlintide decreases the absorption, decreases the new synthesis of glucose, and decreases the weight. This is also an adjuvant drug in patients where glycemic control with insulin and other drugs is not adequate, and we will use it by subcutaneous injection. ADRs, it can cause nausea, vomiting, headache, abdominal pain, weight loss, fatigue, and hypoglycemia will occur only when it is combined with others. Another drug which we study with the other chapters is, we'll read it in the other chapter, but this is a D2 agonist, bromocriptine. Now here you may get a short note on role of bromocriptine in diabetes. This is a drug acting at D2 receptors. Now it will exert anti-diabetic action only if we give it at an appropriate time, that is within 2 hours of awakening. We give quick response bromocriptine mesylate salt. What will happen is that it will reset the hypothalamus. There will be augmentation of low hypothalamic dopamine levels. It is D2 agonist, so dopamine activity in hypothalamus will increase, which was already low. Low dopamine activity in the hypothalamus is augmented. Excessive sympathetic tone of the CNS is inhibited, so it decreases postprandial glucose, triglycerides, free fatty acid levels, and cardiovascular events. In a way, it resets the abnormally elevated hypothalamic drive for increased plasma glucose, free fatty acid levels, and triglycerides in insulin resistant patients. Resets the abnormally elevated hypothalamic drive in insulin resistant patients. This is a unique central mechanism of action. No effect on insulin secretion, no effect on sensitivity of peripheral tissues to insulin. Can be added with other measures or other drugs in poorly controlled diabetics. It reduces HbA1c by 0.4 to 0.8% and also decreases fasting and postprandial lipid levels, triglycerides and free fatty acids. It is effective in a very low dose, 4.8 milligrams daily, and at this dose the only adverse effect observed is nausea. Otherwise, you will see when we discuss bromocriptine in detail and other indications for its use with in the next chapter, you will see that it has many adverse effects, but at this low dose, 4.8 milligram used within 2 hours of awakening, it has only single side effect, that is nausea. Last in the miscellaneous drugs is a bile acid sequestering resin known as colsavelum, lipid lowering drug, but it is observed to improve the glycemic control in diabetics. Mechanism of action is not well understood, but probably it acts on bile acid receptors and triglyceride 5 receptors in the intestine and liver and reduces endogenous glucose production, or might be increasing the secretion of incretins. So you have seen so many drugs. Some are causing hypoglycemia, some are not causing hypoglycemia, some are causing weight gain as an adverse effect, some are causing weight loss which may be beneficial, some are weight neutral. So there is a lot of clutter, lot of confusion in your mind. So few points which you must remember in the summary, that in diabetes the drugs which are effective, they can act by 3 major mechanisms. One is they can increase insulin secretion, second is they can improve the sensitivity to insulin, and third is they can decrease the glucose absorption. These are 3 major mechanisms. Now those drugs which increase insulin secretion are further divided into 2 types based on their mechanism. One is those which bind to the ATP regulated potassium channel, that is bind to sulfonylurea receptors. These include 3 groups: sulfonylureas, meglitinides, that is repaglinide and metiglinide, and D-phenylalanine analog natiglinide. So out of these three, there is risk of hypoglycemia and weight gain, which is troublesome with sulfonylureas. With meglitinides and natagalinide, as they are short acting drugs, the risk of hypoglycemia is less, but meglitinides may cause weight gain. Second group increasing insulin secretion is drugs which mimic the effect of incretins, that is GLP-1 analogs, exenatide, etc., and drugs which prolong the effect of incretins by inhibiting their metabolism. They are DPP-4 inhibitors, sitagliptin, vildagliptin, etc. Hypoglycemia is not a problem with the drugs which act through incretins. Why? Because these drugs, although they increase insulin release, but they do this in response to glucose. If glucose is much more, insulin secretion is much more. If glucose is less, insulin secretion is also less. So hypoglycemia is not much of a problem with drugs acting through incretins. But GLP-1 analogs, by acting on the hypothalamus, they decrease the appetite and cause weight loss. But both the groups carry the risk of causing pancreatitis. So the caution should be given to the patient. Second group major was drugs increasing insulin action on the peripheral tissues, and practically speaking, in it we have two groups, biguanides and thiazolidinediones, and single drug in each group. Biguanides, metformin, thiazolidinediones is pioglitazone. Biguanides or metformin is the first choice because there is no weight gain, there is no hypoglycemia. They improve the sensitivity to insulin. So our first choice drugs in obese diabetics, metformin. Thiazolidinediones are PPAR gamma receptors on the fat cells. They act on these receptors as agonists, and weight gain can occur though hypoglycemia is not common. So in the nutshell, we see that hypoglycemia is a major problem with sulfonylureas, and weight gain can occur with sulfonylureas, meglitinides and thiazolidinediones. Rest of the drugs have unique mechanisms. We have seen either they decrease the reabsorption of glucose from the renal tubules and increase its urinary excretion, or they act as a myelin mimetic drugs, or they act in the CNS, D2 agonist bromocriptine in the have central action. So that's all about anti-diabetic drugs.